Hello everybody, my name is KingStix. In this video, I'm going to try to do a quick rundown commentary guide of how to play 𝐒𝐧 effectively and carry your games in lower and mid elo. This game is roughly high gold, low platinum, so I figured it is a great analog for a lot of you players since most of you are around that elo. 𝐬𝐧 is a champion, performs better in lower mid elo. He's a scaling tank jungler. He's not quite as good as Nunu in the early game, but in the mid and late game he gets very nasty, and he has some high damage on his ultimate to where he can pretty much one-shot a squishy such as a major AD carry if he lands all of his bounces and keeps spamming his W. This 𝐬𝐧 jungle guide is going to be packed full of tips, tricks, and just general playstyle, so I highly recommend watching the whole thing through before you click off. That way you have the full package and not just part of it. 𝐬𝐧 has several pathing options in the early game. One of the strongest ones is just starting on your red buff and getting a leash. If you're not going to get a leash, I would recommend starting on Raptors instead, since you can power clear that and be pretty much full HP, then doing red, then golems, and then ganking the nearest laner. But ideally, starting on red, doing golems into Raps is stronger since you can clear more of your jungle in a more efficient pathing. Make sure to take your Q at level 2 and make sure to pound the monster camps together to get an extra bloblet and to do more damage, and you'll take less damage that way as well. Golem camps do give the most experience, so taking them as your second camp on 𝐬𝐧 is really valuable since they'll be spawning in again, and the second time you clear golems they give 30% more XP, the first time they give minus 30%, so getting those to respawn back in is massive on 𝐬𝐧 since he's such a strong scaling tank. Ganking on 𝐬𝐧 before level 3 just isn't realistic. You're going to want to be at least level 3 and preferably level 4. That way your E has more range and it's moving a little bit faster. Get your E at level 3. You're still going to want to CC the camp together with your Q and your E, and try to hit the whole thing with your W constantly to apply the 100 talisman burn, which will also heal you significantly. Your clears on 𝐬𝐧 should be relatively healthy. The worst part about 𝐬𝐧 is just how easily he can get soloed. If you're playing against something like an 𝐂𝐻𝐿 or Lee Sin, if they're playing aggressive on you, a lot of the times, if you can tell your laners aren't going to come because they don't have prio, you will have to forfeit that part of your jungle and instead look for a gank or look to invade their jungle. On Gromp and Blue, if you feel like the enemy isn't going to invade you, you can pull them together, E them, and double W them to take them a little bit faster. In the early game, you will take a lot of damage doing this, but if you've been clearing your camps effectively, you should be able to sustain through it, and this will help you to get out a faster, earlier gank. But once again, if you feel like the enemy jungler is coming towards you, don't do this because you'll set yourself up in a really vulnerable situation. If you do it safely though, as you can see with just using one refillable potion, I'm pretty much back to full HP. If the scuttle crab is still up, you can take it. In this case, the bot lanes are playing very aggressively, so I'm going to head over here and try to set up my E from the bush. I think it's warded, but I try to get on top of them. I Q the Nautilus, and I tried to ward the bush, but then accidentally attack move clicked on top of the Nautilus once again. If I would have flashed in the bush or gotten a ward down sooner, so I could have flashed auto the 𝐒𝐲, we probably would have gotten a kill. Typically though, with your Q on 𝐬𝐧, you don't usually use it until you've knocked them up with your E, or unless you're behind the enemies and you slow them with your smite first and then Q them. When it comes to invading the enemy jungle, I recommend you only do it when you have a ward to lay in the bush. On 𝐬𝐧, I only really recommend it if it's a camp you can take quickly, an AoE camp like wolves, raptors, or golems. All those you can take relatively quickly, and one cool thing about invading if you get the chance is it sets you up right behind the enemy to land an awesome E. You might have to be a little patient and wait till they move into the right spot. Here, Katarina is pushing up on the minion wave. I hold on to my E, I time it, I land it, I Q her in midair, slam her against a minion, and then we end up picking up the kill. 𝐂𝐻𝐿 is only level 3 and he hasn't bought any jungle items yet. And I have my passive. If you go down under turret with your passive on 𝐬𝐧 and you have minions, it'll start aggroing the minions instead. So the moment 𝐂𝐻𝐿 steps up here, I want to dive him. You have two options. You can open up with Q and then hit him against a turret, or you can E him and then Q him. In this case, I think I should have actually E'd him first. That way I could have avoided his stun and some of his damage, because when I went to Q him, he hit me and it just didn't turn out quite as well. And then 𝐂𝐈 for some reason just stopped attacking him. Since I'm not duo with the 𝐂𝐈 and this is relatively lower elo, I really shouldn't have gone in for that play, and that's something you should watch out for too. Going in for riskier turret dives in the early game on 𝐬𝐧 before you have any items with a player that you don't trust or don't know is just a bit too risky. Level 6 is a massive power spike for 𝐬𝐧. Right now, I don't have any real gankable lanes. Yes, I could have gone bot lane. 𝐴LSTAR wasn't there yet. Plus, my golems were spawning, so this was a perfect opportunity to get my golems and shoot for level 6, since once again it's a massive power spike and CC spike on 𝐬𝐶. Like we mentioned earlier, once you get some points in your E, it will be up a lot more often, and you can use it to get to pretty much every camp and to really get around the map a lot better, since it is quite a bit faster than walking. If the enemies are pushing up on your mid laner, Raptor camp is a perfect spot to E from, since it's typically not warded. In this case, Katarina is backing off after she shoves the minion wave, so instead I'm going to go to my red in the meantime before I gank. When going to gank on 𝐬𝐶, ideally you want to use your sweeper lens to make sure they're not watching you while you charge up your E. You then want to place it to where you think they're going to be and how you think they're going to react once they see your E circle. In this case, I put it pretty much right on top Katarina, slightly favoring behind her. Once I have her knocked up and she can't dodge it, I hit her with my Q and then pound her against one of her own minions. Now that she's CC'd and my 𝐂𝐈𝐊𝐿 is AFK, I smite her, and then I flash behind her to knock her towards my AFK 𝐂𝐈𝐊 to cream her really hard and push her towards my 𝐂𝐈𝐊. Whenever you ult on 𝐬𝐶, it pushes people away from you. So if you flash behind them and then ult, you'll be pushing them in the opposite direction. As you can see, tank 𝐬𝐶 has a lot of damage, and his ultimate on its own can pretty much one-shot people. Since Katarina is dead, I can look to invade the 𝐂𝐷. If he's there, maybe I can get backup from my mid laner, and if he's not there, I can take some camps for free. As I come over here to my Raptors, I notice 𝐂𝐷 is trying to defend his mid lane turret, and this is a perfect spot to E him from. 𝐂𝐈𝐊 pings it, I go in, I do miss my E, but then I land my Q smash, and then 𝐂𝐈𝐊 just lets it be, even though her ultimate is up. It's very clear at this point that I do not want to camp this laner. She has a lot of trouble following up and understand what's going on. If your ult is up on 𝐬𝐶, you can win pretty much any 2v2. Here I'm waiting for 𝐂𝐻 to get in position. I land my E. At this point, I should have queued the minion and then auto 𝐂𝐻 since it was in the way. Instead, I just ulted to CC both of them and do lots of damage. My Vayne isn't really staying in the fight very well though. She stops auto attacking a lot. She stops hitting Nautilus, and then she walks up to 𝐂𝐻 and then doesn't hit her. I go in, and then it is very clear that my Vayne as well is not a very good player. She just wasn't willing to follow the fight into the end, and is just not someone I should be ganking either. I then finished the kill off on 𝐂𝐻. I now know that in intense turret dive situations, 𝐂𝐈𝐊 and my bot lane are both likely to drop the ball, so instead I'm not going to look for turret dives, and I'm just going to look for easy ganks. Katarina way overextends, I hit her with my Q, and then I simply beat her to death. 𝐬𝐶's damage is relatively high, and assassins have no chance against him once he has a few items. You can get some really nice one-shots with your ultimate. You need to be spamming your W non-stop though, because while you are inside of your ulti, you can use your W. So as you're picking up blobs, AoE, you can keep spamming your W for massive damage. As you can see here, I soloed 𝐂𝐷 and I'm tanky. I'm tanky 𝐬𝐶, but I'm mashing my W key and landing my ults. It's really that easy. I then figure out in the mid game that 𝐻eimerdinger is one of my better laners. He actually one lane solo. So for the rest of this game, unless we're in a team fight, I just try to play around him. If the enemies are under your turret, you're typically Eing from your camps. If they're under their turret, you're going to be Eing from their camps and from behind their walls so they don't see you coming. 𝐂𝐷 and Katarina collapse, I E, I then slam them together, and it's just too much CC. This is a mechanic you guys need to get good at. Using your E at point blank range, you can typically do this in the later levels when it's on lower cooldown. It goes off fairly quickly, and as long as you know the direction that the enemy wants to move and they're close to you, you can land it the vast majority of the time. In 2v2, 𝐬𝐶 really does shine as long as you land your CC, especially once you do have some items. That is when you start to outgrow damage, point and click, easy cheesy champions like 𝐂𝐷 and Xin Zhao. Like we talked about, 𝐬𝐶 really does scale well into the late game. Once your E is maxed out, its range is incredible. There's a fight going on bot lane. I can E so far in, I Q the 𝐂𝐷, slam him against the Herald. In these fights, try to be creative with your Q and recognize if you can auto something, you can slam somebody against that something. It doesn't matter if it's a ward, a blast cone, a turret, a Herald, a Baron, a dragon, it doesn't matter. If you can auto it, you can slam an enemy against it, and that CC is honestly crazy. I know I can solo Katarina, and since 𝐂𝐻 is low on HP, I can ult to get to her and smite her to slow her down and then just one-shot her. That's how strong 𝐬𝐶 is right now. Whenever they reverted it, 𝐬𝐶 became a much better champion, and you can actually carry with him in the mid and late game. The main thing is getting through the early game without falling behind, and if you can do that, you should have high consistency with carrying on 𝐬𝐶. In the late game on 𝐬𝐶, one of your biggest power spikes is after you have your Warmog, once you already have your Spirit Visage or another health item, basically 3k HP with Warmog, you're massive. you can go into really long extended fights and then pull back for just a second while your E recharges and get back half of your HP. 𝐬𝐧's cooldowns with max CDR are also very low. Every time you use an ability, after just a few seconds you can use it again, which is insane for a CC gap closing machine like 𝐬𝐧. I'm going to show you guys one more team fight on 𝐬𝐧. Both teams are disjointed right now, but 𝐒𝐻𝐿 is out of position. I Q the 𝐂𝐻𝐶, then auto the 𝐒𝐻𝐿 to bring them together. I then ult all three of them, getting off heaps of damage. My E is now on cooldown because I just missed it point blank range. I flash on the 𝐂𝐻𝐶, slam her against minion, and now I want to E behind her and try to knock her up. She does juke it, but she is losing distance by walking the way she is. I then Q Katarina, knock them together. I E point blank. My team isn't following very well at this point. Luckily though, the enemies are slow to kill me and I barely get up. And this is the power spike I was talking about on 𝐬𝐧. I have 3k HP plus, and I can heal mad crazy with my Warmog now. As you can see, I'm already back to full HP after just a couple of seconds. I can go back in. I try to Q them and then slam them against turret, but it doesn't pay off. I can just wait for my E to come back up and I can continue to heal off of my Warmog. 𝐬𝐧's auto range gets significantly longer after you land your Q. As you see here, I Q the 𝐒𝐻𝐿 while he's in midair, and then I click on the Katarina. While she is in mid-air going past me, it autos her since I had already clicked on her, and I slam them together, thus negating her combo. If your E is up on 𝐬𝐧, you can Q somebody and then E to a nearby target to then slam them together. In this case, my E is on cooldown, so I can't E to 𝐂𝐻𝐶 and then knock them together since I already have Q on the Nautilus. So I just pull off, and now I can heal off of my Warmog. While taking turrets and inhibitors, if you have the advantage, get ready to Q the enemies and slam them against it. In this case, they're not stepping up far enough, so we get to take it for free. Two of the enemies are dead. My ult is up, so right now I'm looking for a pick. 𝐿 gets a good one. I follow up, and then I one-shot the 𝐂𝐻𝐶 using my ult to damage the enemies. And as you can see, I take very little damage because I'm picking up my blobs for my ultimate. As I'm using my ultimate, Q Garen, hit him against turret while he's CC'd. I start my E. Whenever you knock people together with your Q, you can start your E. While they're getting knocked together, that animation does not stop you from using your other abilities. If the enemy team has a shredding auto attack based AD carry like Tristana or 𝐂𝐻𝐶, I recommend getting a Bramble Vest in the mid and late game. That way when they auto attack you, they're not healing off of you. So when you put damage on them, it actually sticks. Me and 𝐿 run 𝐂𝐻𝐶 down and beat her to death. If you need some damage on 𝐬𝐧 and your team is already tanky like you see here with an 𝐿, you can get 𝐿eandri's after you have your jungle item, an HP item, and Warmogs to access the Warmogs. 𝐿eandri's is a great choice because it gives you insane damage. And that is going to wrap up this basic 𝐬𝐧 jungle guide on how to carry. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. My name is KingStix. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.